So let me pull up the agenda here. Got a formal meeting of the Tojo clan, professional meeting here. So today we're going to be discussing the history of Shenmue, ranging all the way back from the early days, not just the Shenmue games, but of course Yu Suzuki and how everything got started. And then we'll be going all the way up through different points in history of the games and kind of how we got familiar with it and just stayed in tune with the community, and then all the way up to Shenmue 3 and moving forward. So, and then all the while we'll be playing, kind of wandering around in the game and stuff, just in between, just to at least have something so you're not just staring at our faces the whole time. And yeah, so kind of with that, I guess we'll kick it off. So I guess first question I had for you is, how did you discover Shenmue? Like, what's the first time you heard about it, would you say?
Do you want a long answer, or do you just want the quick summary?
um, I mean, you can start with the quick one. Maybe I'll probe from there.
uh, right, so, my brother just brought it home one day.
Mm-hmm.
He got a Dreamcast at Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
when they were like £99. Like, after Sega said we're getting out of the business, and they were like just trying to get them on store shelves.
Right.
And he got like 3 games free with it. And when it was Christmas Eve, because he knew he was getting it, he was like 20 at the time, so he was old enough to know what he was getting at Christmas. So Christmas Eve, he bought Shenmue and brought it home to play the next day.
Okay, nice. And I see our old pal South Carmane is here. You better start with Shenmue Zero. We only talk about canon here. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of such nonsense.
It's still real to me, damn it.
But yeah, no, that's funny that you got started. It sounds like basically on the tail end of the Dreamcast life, right?
Yeah. It's like, we were always a Sega family
Yeah.
until the Sega Saturn annoyed my dad with the fact that we bought it, and then like the kid down the road got an N64, and we were like, oh, we want one of them.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
we never bothered with the Dreamcast until it was like done.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, at least as far as Dreamcasts are, I'm turning the audio down a little bit. Might be overshadowing. The fuck? Did the game just crash? The fuck? Wow. All right. Good. We're off to a great start, people.
It sums up how the series did.
Yeah, that sounds about right. All right. Apparently, turning the volume down crashes the game, so that's good. Nice. So yeah, exactly. I mean, I've definitely. I mean, even though I had an NES and Super Nintendo and all that stuff, I definitely was always a Sega fan when I got my Dreamcast, or sorry, when I got my Genesis or Mega Drive. But then I actually never had a Saturn until like many years later, where I even only had it briefly before my Saturn actually broke, but I got it like secondhand, so I wasn't really surprised. Oh, do we have got a follower? Game.film. Thank you. I got this great song playing. So yeah, the Saturn I never really had until, like I said, many years later, so I didn't play it all that much. But then yeah, I got the Dreamcast. I think I didn't get it on launch date, but I got it shortly after. And I got all the Sonic Adventure, and I think Crazy Taxi came out like not that long after. Maybe it was a launch game. But then Shenmue I didn't play until probably another year or so after as well. So, or I guess, wait, when did it come out? No, because that wasn't a launch game, right? Can't even remember anymore. Oh god. Sorry, 1 second. Oh gosh. Did I lose you too?
No, I can't hear you other than through the stream, so I'm just trying to move to my phone.
So it's, all right. So it's doing it again. All right. Yeah, I can hear you. Yep. Are you on your phone now?
Yeah, just That's my headphones.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder why it's doing
This is
that.
great. This is very professional.
It's alright.
Okay, I think we are good.
Alright. Yeah, I wonder why it's doing that. That's really weird. Alright, we'll have to figure that out at a future date. But, so yeah, I was basically saying that, yeah, Shenmue, or I got a Dreamcast, not too long after launch date, but yeah, I got like Crazy Taxi and Sonic Adventure and all that sort of stuff. But I was saying Shenmue didn't come out yet until what, like 2000, I think. So funny enough, I didn't buy it. I actually now I'll take people down a memory lane a little bit here because I went to a Blockbuster when those were in existence, and I wanted to rent a game, and I saw Shenmue, and I was like, well, what the hell is this game? Like, I've never heard of it, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll give it a shot, and I took it off the shelf, and I rented it. And first impression, honestly, was that I hated it. I was like, "What is this game?" Because like it got like when I read the box, it was like this epic adventure, like action, all this stuff, and I'm thinking like, all right, this is gonna be like nonstop action packed, and then I'm doing like what I'm doing now, which is, like buying Coke at a machine, and I'm like, what the fuck is this game?
Yeah, the first thing I remember is like I never saw the opening for ages because I used to just watch my brother play it for a while. So I never saw like Landy just strolling the town like he owned the place.
Right.
I saw like the first thing I saw was him buying capsule toys, and I was like, oh my god, like Sonic, but because at the time I loved Sonic.
Yeah.
So when Shenmue came out, I must have been about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I never, like, people talk about the first time they saw Mario 64 and like how it changed how they view the world.
Right.
I just feel like as a kid I used to see games and be like, I like games, I want to play that.
Yeah.
You know, I never like looked at Shenmue as this thing that was like, oh my god, it's years ahead of everything.
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
Like, the things they're doing are amazing. Because at the end of the day, I was just a kid who wanted to play a video game.
Yeah, exactly.
And it weren't until like I got a bit older and started like reading more on the internet about video games and the history of them that I started to actually realise some of the stuff it did and how shall we say groundbreaking it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, and then when it came out, I was 10 or 11 years old, I guess. I'm not that much older than you, I guess. But yeah, it was the same thing where I was like, yeah, I just want to play. Going to Blockbuster, playing a game for the weekend. I want to have fun and eat, popcorn. Like, I wasn't thinking about it too hard. And so, yeah, I picked it up. I played it for a couple hours, and I actually returned it because I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. Like, I didn't know what the hell it was. And then, funny enough, like and this was during the summer of whatever, of that year, basically. So I had, of course, ample time to do whatever the hell I wanted. And so I instead rented like, I don't know, like Ready to Rumble Boxing or something to like when I brought it back so I could try something else. And then like a couple weeks later, I was, on the internet at that time, and it was early internet, and I was looking around like, all right, what do I want to play next? And I saw Shenmue, this up and coming game, and I'm like, yeah, I played that game, but it sucked. Like, what is it? Like, am I missing something? And so I went back to Blockbuster again, the next couple weeks, and I rented it again. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll give it a try again. And then, yeah, like, even though I was still only, like, 10 or 11, I definitely, like, the more I played it, and that was, of course, during a point where I was like, oh, I'm understanding stories now and not just playing, Mario as a plumber. So, like, I kind of realized, like, okay, this is, like, a more complicated story. And so I kept playing it, and then, I eventually played it all the way through, and I'm like, okay, I think I like this game now. And for a while, that was kind of it. I was like, all right, well, I returned it, and then didn't think about it again. And then for some reason, I think like a year, well, maybe not a year, maybe like 5-6 months later, I was at a store and I saw the game for purchase for like $20 or something, and I'm like, all right, I remember that game, and so I bought it, and then yeah, I just kind of played it again, and I was like, all right, now I'm discovering new things and seeing stuff that I didn't the first time, which was cool.
Yeah, it's also weird as a kid that your perception of time gets thrown off.
Right.
Like, the Dreamcast, when you like read about it, was only around for like 2 years.
Right.
As a kid, it feels like it was around forever.
Yeah, it's funny because this is so weird too, because back in middle school, so for me at least, that was what, like 5th grade or something like that. We used to every week get like this, like, okay, there was the Time magazine, like the normal Time magazine that, comes out like every month on like newsstands or whatever. But then for some reason at that time, Time magazine had like this kids edition that they would come out with for schools, and they would deliver it. And, or maybe not every week, every couple weeks or whatever, but it was like a very like condensed, like kid-friendly version of Time. But I remember there was an issue I got once that talked about the Dreamcast like being dead, and I can't believe like I heard about that in school, like before I did like on the internet basically. And it was like this issue like the Sega Dreamcast is failing, like this brand new system only around for 2 years, and I'm like, I just bought the system, like what do you mean it's dead? Like what the hell? It was
I
so
think
weird.
it was my dad who told us, like, because he going to work would listen to the radio all the time. But my dad being like doesn't really care, so he was probably half listening or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
he was like, "Yep, Sega aren't making games anymore. They're going out of business."
Like what? No.
Yeah, we were like, "What?" And the internet weren't a readily available thing like it is today, so we just was like, "Oh, okay, guess we'll never get a Sonic game again."
Yeah, exactly. Sonic's dead now. Yeah, it was just so weird because especially because you always heard like Sega doing well, especially during the '90s. Like, there's no way in hell they could just fail like that, and so it's definitely a shock for sure that when that happened, I was like, even at that age, I was like, there's no way that can't happen. So that
it's weird as well because like in the UK, like I don't know if this is 100% true. I've never looked it up, but this is what it felt like to me is that the SNES wasn't a big thing.
One game, 100 yen.
I knew one person who had a SNES.
Yeah.
Everyone else had a Mega Drive.
Don't think I should.
Whereas then it sort of flipped once like the PlayStation came out and the N64, and then it felt like no one had a Saturn, no one had a Dreamcast.
Yeah, it is weird because I always felt like when I had my Genesis, I almost felt like I was in the minority a little bit. But even though like they went hard on the campaign in the '90s for like Sega being cool and stuff, but I don't know. I felt like that's funny because I feel like I didn't know too many people with a Genesis.
Yeah. It was literally everyone's house I went round. You would always, if they were obviously kids, have Mega Drive games or things like that. But then I can't remember anyone else ever having a Dreamcast. So I don't remember like talking to anyone ever about games like Shenmue or anything like that.
Yeah, it's funny because definitely at the time I was kind of the same thing as well. But then a few years later, when I went to high school, I actually made more friends who I still talk to now. And the reason why we became friends is because they also had a Dreamcast, and even though like after it died, there was me and a couple others who had one, and we're like, oh, you know what this is now, and you still play this. So it was kind of a nice way to like know the type of person you were talking to, I guess.
All right.
You weren't hooking up on Sega Net after school then?
God, I wish. Are you kidding me? Man, that'd been fucking great. Sega Man joining us. Thanks. How's it going? In South, you're saying snowy Dobuita is very comfy. Yes, it is. That is a good point. I definitely liked playing the Christmas portion of this game. It's just nice to see it. Kind of a cozy place, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, it's funny because by that point, GameCube and Xbox and PS2 were already coming around, and I actually played Phantasy Star Online on the GameCube for a very brief time. Fuck. Even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but yeah, it just sucked how quickly it died. And then of course, obviously, when Shenmue II got announced for the Dreamcast in the East, people were like, "Oh shit! Like, is this going to come out here?" And then eventually did on the Xbox, but not the Dreamcast.
Well, being from England, we actually got it on the Dreamcast.
Well, right, yeah.
My brother beat Shenmue, and I've looked at the dates before, and like I can't quite. It felt like a couple of days after he beat Shenmue, he bought Shenmue 2. So I'm guessing this is around like 2001.
Yeah, it's funny because like after I beat it, then I remember hearing Shenmue 2 coming out, And but then I heard like, oh shit, it's not coming to the U.S. anymore, like at all. And this was before like Xbox even got started. But I ended up finding a website that imported games, and that's how I got
Hey, not
Shenmue
too
2, the
bad.
PAL version for Dreamcast. And it was, I think this website might still be around. I think it's called like ncsx.com or something like that. But it was definitely, I thought it was going to be shady as hell, but they actually sent me the game, so I was like, all right, I'm pretty happy about that.
The wild west of the internet days.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like thrill with whether or not you're going to actually get what you pay for.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, no, we got it for the Dreamcast, and I remember my main takeaway back then was as well,
All right.
being 9-10 years old, was subtitles.
Mhm.
Last
Seriously?
one.
Yeah.
Like, then
No, good.
he also got my brother. He got it when he got an Xbox as well.
I get to play again.
He got Shenmue 2.
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever played it on the Xbox because when I played it, I wanted to be able to carry everything over. So I always just stuck
No,
with
good.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Dreamcast version.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember when it finally did get announced for Xbox, I saw like an advertisement for it, and like my head fucking exploded. I was like, "There's no way! How can they do this?"
No, good.
Like I was just shocked that they would port a game to another system. I guess, which was still, I feel like that didn't happen too often. But then yeah, I found out obviously I couldn't carry my save, and I was pissed. But
So close.
and then when I got the Dreamcast version for the PAL region, I couldn't carry that over either because I had the American version. So it was very weird.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently, funny enough, also in the early days of the internet, is
No, good.
they had like these save converters where you could hook up your VMU and I think
This is the last
convert your save file. I never tried it, but I felt like that would always just corrupt my memory card if I did
Yeah.
that.
That's a lot of effort for a capsule toy.
Right. Well, which is why eventually, and that so it's
Should I
funny
play
because
more?
that then led me to buying the other versions of the
enough for
game
now.
just since I eventually became more of a fan, and that's why even to this day I have every version for a Dreamcast for the different regions, and so that's why I eventually went back and played the PAL version of Shenmue 1 and got all the stuff for it, and then carried over to the PAL version of Shenmue 2, which was kind of cool to do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I played Shenmue. I played it all the way through until Shenmue 2 when you have to fight the three people,
Yeah.
and I didn't have the money to fight them, and I gave up,
Right.
and that was it for a couple of years. That was as far as I got,
Hmm.
and then it wasn't until years later I played it again. I think just Shenmue 2, maybe on the Xbox, and that was when I first beat it.
Yeah.
And then until about 2010, 2012, I'd only played Shenmue 1 once.
Yeah.
And it was after beating Shenmue 2 for the first time that I googled Shenmue 3 and my world fell apart.
Just because there was nothing after?
Well, that was a weird time, like 2004, 2005, because it was like Shenmue Online, I think, had been announced at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Not to jump ahead here, but like,
Hmm.
so that was sort of when I that was my first sort of foray also into the video game world on the internet.
Right.
Trying to find out when the next one was coming out.
Yeah, when information was very scarce and you kind of had to just dig the bowels of the internet to find whatever the hell you could.
Oh, you'd find a news article that now is obviously absolute bull. But
Right.
back then you'd be like, yeah, this article with no
Here are your
sources that
tokens,
says
sir.
it's coming out next year seems legit.
Yeah, it seems totally normal.
Thanks.
What are some of the questions? Reading the chat again. So, they released Shenmue only in English. Okay, so your friend invited you over. Nice, yeah. Yeah, Sega does some weird stuff when they bring over games and translations and stuff. So anybody play the Shenmue Passport? Briefly. Not like a whole lot. Like, of course, on the Dreamcast, there was the like the little movies and like character model stuff that you can look at, and there was that online component that I never really got to experience, but for people who did, I guess that was pretty cool. You could get like special capsule toys and stuff.
Yeah, I never did any of the passport stuff. We never had the Dreamcast hooked up to the
Sir?
internet because
Sir?
that,
Yes.
it wasn't
I
wireless.
can hold your leftover
and
coins
Right.
for you.
we always had our game
Would you
consoles
please?
in our bedrooms, well away from the Ethernet ports.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I tried to at one point, but I was so close to when the Dreamcast was basically dead, and it just wasn't worth it anymore. So I figured, whatever. And yeah, it's funny, Sega Man saying that the Xbox is basically Dreamcast 2.0. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of games that either got ported or like sequels or whatever from Sega, so that was cool to see. That's why, it's crazy when I look at my video game collection, because even though I definitely still love my Dreamcast and have, I don't know, a fair amount of games, my Xbox collection is probably my biggest with how many games I have, because I love that system. There's so much Sega and non-Sega stuff on it that I just love.
Well, I remember when we got an Xbox, you got that disc with it that came with a Sega racing game
Yeah.
and Jet Set Future.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't one on there. But yeah, no, there was a few like
Right.
Sega games like Shenmue II came to the Xbox, and then Panzer Dragoon.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, the original Xbox didn't sell great and isn't that amazingly remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy should know
But
something.
it had some great
I need to
games.
go to Asia Travel.
Yeah,
Conference.
I don't know. There's just such a massive variety of games, and I felt like they carried over a lot of interesting Sega stuff. And even Sega obviously started making games for it for the first time, so which was really cool. Also, Enin Creature followed us. Thank you for following us. Appreciate it. So anyways, so yeah, early days of finding it was definitely fun in that part of the internet, the age of the internet. So that was a good time. I remember that fondly. So I guess the next question that I have as we're moving along is, why do you think the game stuck with you so much? Like, what was the most meaningful part of it for you?
I'll be honest, I don't 100% know because I was quite young and I just enjoyed playing games.
Yeah.
I think what it is the detective style story.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always been hooked on stuff where you always feel like you're going to get the next clue and it's going to blow the case wide open.
Right.
Like, I love the TV show Lost, and I love Twin Peaks. Anything where you don't know the answer and you're trying to find it out. I think that's what appealed to me. Just this idea that every time you ask someone, it gives you a new lead, and the story kept moving forward, which Shenmue's story is pretty standard. It's
Right.
nothing amazing, but getting that trickle of information constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
Sorry that they're asking. Yeah, if you hear my cats and dog freaking out, they're just running around. I got like a freaking a zoo of animals here. Got 2 cats and a dog, so apologies if they're just screaming.
You're just a typical San Fran hippie.
Exactly. Well, I've had these pets even before I moved here, but yeah, I do love my animals. But yeah, South was also saying that a lot of people just played it for Halo, which, yeah, it is kind of crazy that all people remember is just Halo, it seems like, but I said, I could just list off a whole bunch of games that I have on it, and
Yeah.
I did love Halo, but that definitely wasn't the most frequent game that I played on there. But yeah, so Shenmue for me was interesting. I mean, kind of the same thing that you're describing, where it was like a detective thing. There wasn't like, I mean, I'm just walking around as you're seeing right now, and like, yeah, I could pull up my journal to say, okay, maybe look at these things. Here's clues. Go figure it out. But like, I would play this game for endless hours. Even like this, I've beaten this game more than any other game in my life, and there's still times where I have to remember, like, oh shit, wait, what do I need to do again? Because like, I just remember walking around kind of aimlessly, like not necessarily in a bad way, but just opening doors and like going into places and just figuring things out. So like it was different, and to me, I guess it depends on what kind of person you are, because a lot of people complain saying like it's boring, it's slow. Like I remember the IGN reviews were like, 6 or 7 out of 10, like what the hell are you supposed to be doing, it's too slow. But I don't know, like for some reason it was just different enough that I was like, okay, I think I can get behind this.
Yeah, I used to play Shenmue in like, I want to say like 2010, 2012 sort of time. Because I rebought a Dreamcast because my brother had sold his by then. And I really struggled with my replay of Shenmue.
Mm-hmm.
It was the second time I'd ever played it, but when I knew where you had to go, and I'd already explored the town,
Mm-hmm.
I found I was trying to kill time a lot.
Right.
And it was great the first time you play it, because you're like, oh my god, what's in this building? I've got to kill... Oh, I best leave at 3 o'clock, I've got to go here. But the moment I knew what to do, where to go, and what every building had to offer, I just wanted it
100
to progress,
yen each.
Mm-hmm.
to get to the next part.
Maybe
I
just
never
one.
was a big one for like, oh my god, I've got to look at every single plant pot in this shop.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why it really it dragged for me a second time, and I think Shenmue II
What? This again?
now is probably, I would have to argue, the better game, but I prefer Shenmue 1, the feeling
Mm-hmm.
of being
Maybe
in
I
like a
should
small
get
town.
another.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, where like
Change my mind.
Shenmue 2 clearly expanded on the game and put in some conveniences, and it's obviously bigger. But yeah, like I don't know why I can always come back to this game and be like, oh, okay, this feels pretty good. I enjoy this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, like the thing I don't know, it's hard for me to pinpoint as well, but I think that's around the same time that I started finding out about like anime and more video games as well, and then just Japanese culture stuff, like, you know, typical freaking weeb stuff. Like I'm not going to be ashamed of it. Like I'm not going to beat around the bush. Like that's this time like I started getting into it, and I think this was the closest I could get to understanding what it felt like to live in Japan. Because I mean, if you granted, certain things are a little bit not exaggerated per se. Like this house, like isn't exactly common per se with how nice it is and how big it is. But like, it just gave me a feeling of like, oh, this is what it's like to be in that country. Because by that point, I hadn't traveled to any other country, so I was like, this seems like an escape to me that I couldn't get anywhere else, I guess.
Yeah, there were the odd little things here and there that I was a bit like, oh, this is not English.
I think I'll warm up
But
a bit.
for the most part, even as a young kid, I
Let's
kind
get
of like
sweaty.
figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like things that still throw me off are like Japanese names and stuff.
Right.
But I think Shenmue's not as even crazy about it. Something like the Yakuza series, where they just all throw like 15 names that sound like each other in one scene.
Yeah, I think they definitely tried to make it approachable with these games. Like, you know, it's like a kung fu epic or whatever, which by that point plenty of people have seen that stuff, like in the States or in the UK or whatever. So I think they tried to make it somewhat reasonable and not too insane. So yeah, I get what you mean. Just practicing my sick moves here. What's everyone else saying? Did anybody else think it would have been better if they finished it as an anime and manga? So yeah, well, so we'll talk about that in just a little bit as well, because a lot of people have thought that as just the same. So yes, yes, we have thought about that as well. Let me quit here. But yeah, so anyways, that's kind of the meaning, I guess, of the games for sure. So I guess to give a little bit of recap, because one thing that, and maybe for the couple that are in the chat, this may not be the case, but I'm surprised when I've streamed on here when I'm playing Yakuza how many people have actually not played Shenmue. Which, I mean, I'm not that shocked about it, to be honest, but like, it's like, I guess I think a few of us probably assumed like, oh, if you played Yakuza, then you've definitely played Shenmue, but that's not the case, which I thought was funny.
Well, running the Tojo Dojo Twitter account, you realise how stupid people can be when it comes to a decision on if they're going to play a game or not.
Yeah.
And the excuses they will come up with to not play them.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I'm just like, okay, if it interests me, I'll play it. If not, I'm just not interested.
Right.
But you see people jumping through these mental hoops where they're like, oh, like, Shenmue's stupid because, like, it bankrupted Sega. Or
right.
like, right. Even if it did, why is that not why should you not play it still?
Yeah, that'd be like more reason to play it, just to see what the hell they did.
Yeah, what? Like I played Duke Nukem Forever because I was like, I've got to see how this turned out.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love the Duke Nukem games. I played that too, and I mean, yeah, it was a train wreck, but I'm like, I gotta play it.
But then I also see people like, oh, there's no point playing Shenmue because like Yakuza's just a better version of it, and I'm just like, so is there no point in watching The Sopranos because Breaking Bad was better?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
well, it's
it just makes no sense to me.
well, that's the same thing you could say about like any video game. Like I love, for like when it comes to Zelda, like I love Wind Waker. That's probably my favorite Zelda. But just because I love that doesn't mean there's no point in playing Ocarina of Time, which people consider like the greatest game of all time, or even like any of the Super Nintendo ones. Like that doesn't even make sense. That's like saying just because something progresses means you can completely ignore everything before it, which is goofy to me.
Yeah, no, it's always been bizarre because like I don't know if it's just me liking weird stuff that I always kind of want to see it. Like when I went to see Cat, the movie, because I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score. I'm like, I've got to see this.
I still have not seen that. I'm almost like afraid to watch it, but like I kind of want to.
Don't bother. I went in fully expecting I was going to laugh for 2 hours, and it just, you laugh for the first minute, and then it's just the same, and the joke gets over.
Oh Jesus! All right, so really just a true travesty of cinema.
Yeah, it's not even that it's really bad. It's just really boring.
Right. Yeah, I've heard, that's good times. So, but given that, it is funny to see that when people, like I said, they don't know about Shenmue, which means they probably don't know a whole lot about Yu Suzuki either, which is fine, whatever. I mean, he's not, like, I guess I would call him almost the equivalent of, like, Shigeru Miyamoto, but for Sega, I would feel like, at least to an extent in terms of, like, arcade stuff. I mean, he definitely is, like, prolific in that sense. So, like, obviously, like, now I'm in the U Arcade, which is, I guess, kind of a play on words because Yu Suzuki, but you have Space Harrier and Hang On, but then he, of course, like in Shenmue II, there's other games that he worked on, like Afterburner and Outrun. And so he was, the pioneer of all those games, and that's kind of where he got his start at Sega. And then, of course, after that, he went on to make Virtua Fighter, which that series, I mean, shit, even recently they're talking about, rebooting it with whatever they're going to do. And I mean, I don't think he's involved anymore, it doesn't sound like, but he started that series, and he definitely tried to push for, like the 3D fighting and not just like more 2D Street Fighter type of stuff anymore, which was pretty cool.
See, I've never felt like he's ever Miyamoto Sega.
Some real nasty things can happen if you're not careful, huh?
He seems like an idea man.
By the way,
to me,
how did that guy?
Like, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this?
Yeah.
And he wants to figure it out. And sometimes it's not even about the gameplay, but just more about like, he revolutionized arcade cabinets rather than the arcade game.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because I even remember this cabinet right here that I'm looking at for Hang On. I played this type of cabinet actually back in the day at this one arcade I used to go to, and I loved it. Like, I could not stop playing it, but like, I don't know, I still love Hang On, to be honest. That's probably my favorite game of his, but it's definitely heavily because I used to play this physically in the arcade back in the day, and I loved it.
Yeah, I feel like if Miyamoto and Yu Suzuki were both staring at an arcade cabinet in the 80s, Miyamoto would be staring at the screen, whereas Suzuki would be staring at the cabinet.
Exactly, because yeah, especially when it comes to like Afterburner, he practically like turned people upside down in that cabinet.
Yeah, and it's even when you go into like Virtua Fighter and stuff, it seems like he was more interested in, can I make 3D games rather than the 3D game he was making.
Right.
And like how, like the technology behind it. Because he said himself, he's not a big gamer.
Right.
He just seems to be more like an inventor type. He wants to tinker with things and see what he can do. Whereas like Miyamoto's always like, oh, what if Mario was a horse in this game?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing though about video games is like, you could take those different kinds of approaches and still be obviously very innovative and help push the medium forward, which is I still admire him for that for sure. But yeah, I could understand that difference for sure.
Yeah, and when you read about the development of Shenmue, it seems like rather than making a game, he was more focused on what can I do here?
Right.
Like what technology can I evolve? What technology can I play with?
Well, yeah, especially because if I remember correctly from an interview, he like really pushed, or not he, but like his team, I guess, really pushed the boundaries in terms of just what they could even fit on a disc in terms of like compression algorithms for like massive audio files and like cutscenes and stuff like that. Because I mean, up until the point of this coming out, like there wasn't very many games that did a lot of what this game did, but more to your point though, more so on the technology piece as opposed to like the story, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you see interviews with other people that worked on the game, like Nagoshi and things like that, and they're just like, there was no plan to actually get the game out from Yu Suzuki. He was more just interested in like messing about with it and seeing what fun he could have.
Just gonna move on to Shenmue II here. Well, for some reason the game just keeps crashing, so yeah, great port, obviously. Not sure what the hell keeps happening. But either way, I'm gonna move on to Shenmue II anyways, so it's all good. Yeah, exactly. So and then I guess the other part about its history is how it technically got started on the Sega Saturn, and there's old videos of that, which are pretty interesting to watch and see how, like, just the jump in quality from, like, pure pixelated, like, rectangles walking around, basically, to, like, what, came out on the Dreamcast. And so it's funny to see how they, like, I can't imagine that this game coming out on the Saturn and, like, I mean, would this thing be, like, 10 discs long or something? Like, it must have been insane.
I think it would have been a lot shorter. There would have been a lot less to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would have probably been a much more A to B game.
Right.
Probably more story focused.
Yeah, that's probably a good
because
point.
when you look at all the footage from the Saturn era, it is all story.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I remember there's the one footage of, like, him and Guizan talking, and then, I forget what the other one is, but yeah, that's a good point, actually. They probably just shortened it quite a bit.
Yeah, there's no footage of, like, him hanging out in an arcade, for example.
Right, exactly.
Like, doing his forklift driving.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, obviously it started out there, and I think the interesting part, and I guess we kind of briefly talked about it a little bit, but like, it's funny that even when the game first came out, there was this big hype around how the kind of game it was, and it cost $1 bajillion, and yet some people were still unhappy with it. And then of course now Shenmue II came out, and I mean, people who loved it, I think loved it and wanted to obviously continue playing, but then I think more people were probably maybe, I guess, expecting more out of a sequel to change it up a lot more, and I'm sure people were still kind of bored with, like, oh, this game's too slow or whatever, and ultimately, like, I don't think Shenmue was the downfall of the Dreamcast by any means, but it just sucks. It, like, coincided with the Dreamcast dying, and then I think that's when things started kind of falling off the cliff a little bit.
Well, I know some people that say, like, oh, I don't like Shenmue 1, but I like Shenmue 2, and I've always found that hard to wrap my head around, because they are pretty similar in terms of at least how they play and things like that. It's not like the Final Fantasy series where it changes up every entry from the battle system to the story to the characters. Where, yeah, there's certain entries I like and I don't like, but Shenmue 2 literally feels like you're popping in disc 4 of Shenmue 1.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a continuation. I mean, obviously they did do things better. Like I said, they expanded it, had like more like fights, and you can do a good old favorite lucky hit. So yeah, they definitely expanded on it, and it's fine. Like we were saying earlier, if you have a preference for one over the other. But yeah, to your point, to say if they just outright don't like Shenmue 1, yeah, that would be a little bit weird, I guess.
Like Self saying, it's the pacing and frequency of action into. Like, yeah, I know there's more. It's just. It still doesn't seem like a completely different game to me. It still seems like Shenmue.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. So, Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like I said, when I imported this game, the PAL game, and it came in, I popped it in and I played it basically all the way straight until I finished it for like a couple of days, and it was like during the summer or something again, and so I had nothing else to do, and I just popped it in, played all the way through, and I was like, all right, gotta go through it again now. I gotta see all the crap that I missed.
Well, at first I watched my brother play it, and he must have got. I always remember the bit where you get jumped and then you wake up in the orphanage. I remember him getting like that far, or waking up in the church. Sorry, not the orphanage.
Yeah.
I remember him getting that far, and then my brother has this habit of playing 3/4 of a game and then just stopping. Like I don't think he's beat a game in like 20 years. And it don't matter how long or short it is. It'll be like the Telltale games, and he gets to like episode 5, chapter 3, and he just stops. So I then, like a year later, when I actually played Shenmue for the first time, just played it, and as I said before, I stopped when you get to the finals, and then it wasn't until I replayed it, just Shenmue II, and then I just plowed through the game.
So do you think Shenmue 2, was there any like different feeling in terms of why you also liked it, or just basically for the same reasons as Shenmue 1 pretty much?
This is it.
I think for the same reasons. I loved it once the story it got counted. Because it feels very non-stop at that point.
Right.
Like the story is front and center. Everything's moving forward.
Fuck
Can't believe it.
Well
You got
done.
it in.
First try.
Yeah,
Exactly. Definitely. Especially with Kowloon, and I mean, I know, what was it, a few weeks ago or a month or whatever, we did kind of a virtual tour of Kowloon, because when I found out about what Kowloon was, and then I started looking into like the lore behind that real life city, I'm like, oh shit, like I gotta look into this, and it was obviously super interesting as well, and that kind of like added to
This
it.
is it.
Yeah, I've never been one that reads much into the history of like the towns and stuff in the game. I was on the Shenmue Dojo once and saw like all the photos of the
It's
Wheater
not good to
like
win so much.
long after like I beat the
Well, we
game,
just started. Try again.
and didn't realize it was like actually a real place.
Yeah, exactly, and that kind of, once again,
I want to try it.
back when I was playing the first one and getting into like understanding stuff about Japan, that's when I started looking it up a little bit. I'm like, oh, these are real places. Like I mean, obviously Japan's a real place, but I'm like, are these modeled after real places? And I found out like, yes, it was. And then obviously with Shenmue 2, maybe they gamified it a little bit, so it's not 100% the same, but like the fact that they're based in reality was just interesting to me.
Well, I remember the GDC talk that Yu Suzuki did, and everyone got really angry with my comment about it. Because he did the GDC talk and everyone thought he was going to announce like Shenmue 3.
Right.
That's really good.
Because apparently that's where you do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then wasn't the name of that talk like the death of Shenmue or something, or like the
It was
post-mortem?
Like the post-mortem.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably not the best place to announce a new game.
No, not this
Yeah,
time.
and he like all it was him like, oh, like I went to China and like saw this, took these photos, like the monks in this temple are like this, and blah blah blah. And my comment at the end of it was, I just watched a middle-aged Japanese man for 90 minutes show me his holiday photos.
That's very accurate. Yes, pretty much.
Like, and everyone got angry, like, how dare you disrespect him?
Our Lord and Savior, Yu Suzuki. It's fine.
I was like, sorry, but that's not kind of what I went in for.
Right. Oh, that's hilarious. So, who else we got on stream? Oh, BB Retro, Brian, what's going on? So yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that time was interesting because once again, it was the Dreamcast games, and they were coming to Xbox. There was a decent amount of information, and then, then all of a sudden it sort of just, stopped. Like, there was just no more information, or, every once in a while you'd hear on a site, oh, is Shenmue 3 going to come out finally? And like there were stories, but like nothing. After the Dreamcast and the Xbox port, it was like, well, what do we do now? Like, there wasn't anything else to do. And so by that point, I kept wondering, like, okay, so how am I going to find out more information? Because it was still, like, random internet posts. And I'm like, okay, I got to see where can I go to find more information about this. And then that's what eventually led me to looking for the fan community stuff online. And, of course, where you and I, at some point, eventually started talking, which was the Shenmue Dojo website.
Yeah, I rolled credits on Shenmue 2, and as the credits were rolling, like, TV was in one corner of the room, and the PC desktop was in the other. So while the credits were rolling, I just went over and I googled Shenmue 3. Because the way it ends as well, I was like, okay, what's happening here? I was like, we got to see where this goes.
Yeah, surely there's more.
Yeah, and it's weird, but
I'll try again.
it wasn't like the day after Shenmue 2 came out,
I guess not.
anyone said, that's it. It was a slow realization, and even slower for some times. For some people. Like, there's some people that legit thought it was always just out of arm's reach.
Right.
Some of us who thought it was dead. But when I like googled it and they were like, oh, like it seemed to be the news was it's coming to Xbox, it's coming.
Right, just hang tight, it's coming. Yeah, exactly.
And I think Shenmue Online was announced by then as well. I kind of missed the announcement of Shenmue Online. I just knew, like, by the time I was aware of its existence, like it was a thing that was being made.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have to look up the year, but I thought it was like 05, 04, 05 maybe? Or maybe it was sooner than that, but yeah, it wasn't like super long after 2, I don't think, at least.
Well, I think 2 came out on Xbox in like 2003.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So I was like, and I'm pretty sure like Shenmue Online at that point when I googled Shenmue 3 was announced and that. And I looked at it and I was like, meh. Not my opinion of it. But I was like more interested in Shenmue 3. But yeah, we were like, at that point we were still pretty sure.
Let me try.
It was happening.
Well then, take a stand.
Right. Yeah, it was just like this game, this like Sega staple franchise by that point was like, surely they're going to continue it. They can't just leave it on that cliffhanger. Yeah, and South, you're asking about Shenmue 1 and 2 remaster, so we will be talking then just a little bit. It's what I'm playing right now, but we're right now kind of going in the chronology a little bit. But in general, it's okay, but I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, exactly. So by that point, I think it was 03 or 04, something like that. I actually joined the Shenmue Dojo website, and then I know even before that it was on a different website, and I don't think I was there that early per se, but that's when I joined and started posting with like-minded people, I'll call it, for the Shenmue community to just see more about it. And that's where, of course, there was all the mods for the games and like the fan theories and art, like fan art and stupid conversations about other stuff. And if I remember correctly, you said you joined another year or so after that, maybe something like that.
Well, my join date always says 2006.
I want to try.
I don't think I started posting regularly until like 2008. Because I remember like googling Shenmue 3, and I probably lurked here and there for a bit.
Right.
Like I weren't on every day lurking, but I'd occasionally go on, see if there's any news. Wander into the junk forum and immediately regret that.
Yeah, there was.
That was a lot for a young Riku to see.
Yeah, exactly. Like there were some very questionable things on that forum. I'll give you that one. But yeah, it was fun just because it was a place where, like, I mean, I know we talked about this before, but like, it was in the age of pre-social media, basically pre-YouTube, and that's when I think forums in general were at their height, because it was like a community to go to for a particular subject, whether it was gaming or, fucking auto parts, whatever forum you wanted. there usually existed one, and I mean they still do today, I guess, but they certainly aren't as popular, as like Twitter or Reddit or whatever. So it was fun to go to that forum because it was just a bunch of people, chatting about whatever, and obviously about Shenmue, but then there were other topics as well that we could dick around about, which was fun.
See, by the time I was posting there regularly, it was not about Shenmue. It was just other stuff like games, general discussion, things like that. And it was a fun forum because everyone knew each other and knew what games each other liked and had a personality to them. Whereas, like, you see forums like Reset Era, where there's 50,000 posts on every topic, all by different people.
Right.
And that it's not a conversation at that point. That's just everyone posting opinions and.
It's just a shouting match.
yeah. That's it. Like, there's no back and forth. There's no community there because there's too many people. I think like a forum to have like a bit of a community feel, it needs to have like between a very specific number of members.
Yeah, exactly, and and that's the thing to clarify too. It's not that having more people in a particular community is bad, but to your point, it does reach kind of like a saturation point where it just becomes like it's just random people. So it becomes hard to hold a conversation. So yeah, I totally understand what you mean. But yeah, at first, I was kind of lurking for a little while, and then I eventually started posting. And then there was definitely a number of years where I'll call the drought years where like nothing was being announced. I mean, online kind of was, and then they did Shenmue Guy, which was that mobile game, which I don't even know if that actually ever was like released or if that was. I mean, I know it's just a Japan thing, but I don't know if it actually even made it to like working. To be honest,
I'm pretty sure people on the dojo played it. Like they set up Japanese accounts and VPNs or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But so I mean, of course, it was just an experiment a little bit for Yu Suzuki to try and do something. It sounds like, which whatever, it's all good. And then go ahead.
He also just hadn't done anything.
Well, that too.
Well, I have always said that I would just be so fascinated to know what he did between 9 to 5. Between the years of like 2002 and 2010.
He's an idea man, I thought you said.
Yeah, but there's only so much you can sit at your desk and be like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did this game? And they're like, yes, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's paying his wage. Someone's like keeping his lights on at his house. Like, what is that man doing? Because also as well, he just seems to disappear.
Right.
Like, I remember, was it that website Tiki Zone? Interviewed him in like 2006, 2007 when Shenmue Online was a thing.
Right.
And it seemed depressing at the time. It just seemed like there was this man who, because of this game he made that didn't sell great, was just desperate to get back some of his recognition and be a name again.
Yeah, exactly.
And after that interview, he like disappeared again for years.
Yeah, I don't know if he because I don't know at what point he stopped becoming like a Sega employee, I guess, or like I mean I don't think he is anymore, right? Like he has his own studio, but at what point he just like stopped?
Well, this it. I don't think anyone really knows what happened because do you remember Digital Rec?
I don't know if I do.
So, after Shenmue 2 and like I think before Shenmue Online, there was this. I remember on like the Shenmue Dojo and things like that. He set up a company called Digital Rex.
Are you saying Digital Erect?
No, Rex, like a T-Rex.
Oh, Rex. Okay, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and no one knew what it was because yet again it was early internet days. There wasn't a lot of information out. All we knew was that Yu Suzuki had started a company called Digital Rex.
Yeah.
And then like he gave an interview a few years later, and he seemed to be back at Sega.
Mm-hmm. God, I don't even know if I remember that. But yeah, that does sound like familiar though. Like there were some years of him going like back and forth.
Yeah, And then there was some guy who worked for Sega of America who was like, oh yeah, Yu Suzuki retired. And then Sega came out and was like, no, he hasn't.
He's still alive.
Yeah, he's still at the company.
It's just
And but he just seems to especially as game makers become more like celebrities. He was just nowhere to be seen.
Right. Yeah, it is weird because I'm trying to think if there was other interviews he gave. Like, he didn't really show up at, like, you know, E3 or anything like that. But, I'm sure every once in a while people reached out to him. And, like, even when Shenmue 3 was eventually announced, which we'll get to in a little bit, like, he always said that, like, people always came up to him and say, like, when's Shenmue 3 coming out? And then, like, but, like, he must have been somewhere for people to ask him that. So, like, I don't know where he was.
What?
Yeah, like, there was always, like, rumors that he was about or gonna do something, but there was nothing concrete.
Yeah, exactly. Just right. More rumors, and then that's what, of course, led. And so coming back to the Shenmue like community, or like the Shenmue Dojo forums, I think that's also what led it to be such a funny place. Or not funny, but like just a fun place, is people kept speculating of like, all right, if Shenmue 3 was going to happen, like what would that look like? And then eventually, after a little while, they found the area at the end of the Shenmue 2 discs for the village that Shenmue 3 eventually takes place in, and then people started speculating, and then obviously it just exploded from there to every fan theory in existence, down to like, like what jacket do you think Ryu's going to wear in the next game, or like how many capsule toys in this one, and just like the stupidest fan theories, which cracked me up.
I always remember that Landy is in the cave.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, I was like, what do you think he's doing? Just like hiding behind a boulder and he's
just in the bushes.
Come out.
Yeah, exactly. But that, once again, that led to just, like, once again, the community could, like, joke about that stuff and, like, not take itself too seriously. And then, obviously, yeah, that once the Shenmue news eventually, like, truly died, then that community kind of stayed around to talk about just other dumb crap, like other games and movies, and just, you know, sharing dumb stuff. And that's what still made it fun.
I think the people who stuck around, if you look, like, we're still in contact with, like, 30-odd people.
Right.
When recently when Shenmue 3 came out, and I was like, should try and get, like, everyone back together, because Shenmue 3 coming out is a big thing.
Right.
I've done about 50 names and of people I was trying to, like, track down or email and things like that, and it never felt to me like our community was that big.
Yeah.
Which kind of shocked me that it was that many people. But I don't think any of them. Well, I shouldn't say any of them. I don't think the majority of them would even say Shenmue's their favorite game.
Sure.
They really like it. They appreciate it. They know what its limits are. They kind of had moved on at some point.
Yeah.
They weren't obsessed with it.
Yeah.
To the extent that some people are.
Right.
And I think that was it. So then when Shenmue 3 looked like it wasn't going to happen, everyone didn't take it as a personal insult.
Yeah.
They kind of, like, joked about it, or it became a meme.
Right.
When other people who did get upset about it voiced that they were upset about it, everyone had fun with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
For me, I really enjoy it. I would just never say it was, like, my favourite. I don't think I'd even put it in my top 10. I really, really enjoy it. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a fair statement. It's like I struggle with it a little bit because, like I said, I've probably beaten Shenmue 1, and I guess maybe to a slightly lesser extent Shenmue 2, more than any other game in my life. Like I like, no joke, throughout my whole life I've probably beaten Shenmue 1 10 times, like, honestly. And Shenmue 2 probably 4 or 5, I imagine, just because it is a little bit longer, I guess. But I struggle to keep reevaluating it, like, do I like these games? Like, it's weird. Like, yes, I like them. Is it my favorite game? I don't know. Like, I want to say Shenmue 1 is, but I think it definitely is more, coming back to, like, why the game is meaningful, it's more an issue, or not an issue, more a thing of, like, it means a lot to me, but maybe it's not my favorite game. And not that it really matters, it's just semantics at that point, but like it definitely holds an important place in my history, I guess.
Yeah, I think some people put a lot of stock in like favorite, best.
Right.
When my favorite game is Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you Final Fantasies that are better than that, and that I would recommend that you play
Right.
as your first Final Fantasy. But it's what that game meant to me at the time, how I feel when I go back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I'm under no illusions. It's not the best game ever. Like there's certain things it did amazing at the time that maybe just haven't aged as well. You know, it's a weird game in certain aspects, but when I play it, I feel nostalgic.
Right.
I want to try it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think if you remember from a couple months ago, I was mentioning I played So when the Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, I wanted to play it, and I eventually did play it for the PS4, which was awesome, but before playing it, I wanted to play the original because I had never played Final Fantasy VII and up until before the remake came out, and so I got the Switch port, and I basically played it with like cheats on because I just wanted to experience the story, to be honest, and then kind of, I didn't want to like completely not play it, but like I know you have to grind, and those types of games just drive me nuts where you have to grind. And so I played it, like I said, with like the God mode cheats on, basically. And the thing is, even with that stuff on, I still enjoyed Final Fantasy VII. Like, it was a great game. But to your point, like, I didn't grow up with it. It doesn't have that meaning to me. So I'll never say it's like a top 10 or 20 game to me. But like, I can understand why obviously people would say that.
Yeah, I think like the way some people describe Shenmue is like what Final Fantasy VII was to me. You know, it was the first game that I played that really had like a story and felt like more mature and things like that. So I get it, but I think sometimes people need to realise that it's not the end of the world if other people don't appreciate it, and it's okay to see faults in things.
Yes, exactly. And that, and we'll definitely get into that in just a minute when we start talking about the masterpiece that is Shenmue III, so where we can describe people's feelings on that for sure. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I keep forgetting the chat's on. So they lost Yu Suzuki with the hard drive that had the source code for Panzer Dragoon. Yeah, probably threw him in a corner somewhere for a while.
I seriously want to know who was paying that man's bills. I seriously want to know what he was doing all that time. Because you look at photos of him now, and he's in like a tiny office.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about, oh, he had a Ferrari. That was given to him, okay? He did not buy that out.
Right.
He is also he is a game creator of the 80s. He is not getting royalties.
Right.
Everything he made is owned by Sega. He got paid then. He's not getting paid now.
Exactly.
Who is paying this man's bills?
He's probably a drug dealer now. He's like a coke mule.
For the sailors.
Yeah, clearly he's working for Charlie or Terry.
The worst gangs in the world are in Shenmue.
Exactly.
It's like what old people, and I guess it is at the end of the day. It's like what old people think teenagers were like in the '60s on their motorbike.
Right, exactly. Just fucking like they're turning into greasers like Goro and just beating people up. It's great.
Like at the end of the day, I know gangs are more like they do drugs, like sell drugs so they can make money and like give it. I think his idea is he thinks people just hang out in an alley and that's their job.
Right. Sounds like a great job. I'll do that.
I know someone just pays your bills, that's not how it works for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I guess South also has a good point of like didn't want to fire him because like, so in Japan there's definitely the thing of like important, like not like saving face and like being respectful for like hierarchy and your elders and stuff like that. And even if he wasn't like the Shigeru Miyamoto of Sega, he was definitely well respected. So they probably put him on a quote unquote special assignment so they didn't have to fire him, but they like put him in a corner doing God knows what.
Because he's talked before about like he had ideas and like they never got taken off, or he did that touchscreen game, Busy Fi or something like that, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
So he was obviously tinkering away on stuff.
Right.
I don't think he was like quite turning up, throwing his suitcase on the desk and like literally swung the chair around and looked out the window for 8 hours a day.
Right. Look, guys, I got this great idea. You gotta listen to me.
He's there with like a tape recorder.
Oh God, I would love to see that.
I just want to know what he was doing. I'd love like a timeline of everything he worked on, how long for, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I need to see his credits somewhere. Like, I don't know if he executive produced or something during that time or whatever. But yeah.
I've looked at that stuff, but I want to see the stuff that was cancelled as well.
Yeah.
The stuff that he worked on for like 6 months that then they turned around and said, yeah, we're not going into full production on this.
Right. That's good. Maybe as a LinkedIn. Yeah. Let me send Yu Suzuki a LinkedIn request and see if he'll accept.
You'll just get a message back that says "Fun Shenmue 4?" question mark.
All right. Look, this is the real reason why I wanted to PM you. All right.
I need $40 million.
Just wire it to my Swiss bank account. I swear. But yeah, so that's so want to kind of wrap up the drought years a little bit before the Shenmue 3 announcement. That's where, obviously, once again, you had the speculation. So to bring it back, you did have Shenmue 0. I think that came out from the fan-made games at some point. Who knows when.
I saw like 4 screenshots of that. That was about the most I ever saw of that.
Yeah, I don't think I ever booted it up. And I was like, all right, well, cool. I'm glad someone did it for the fun. But yeah, I think
now, if you want someone to tell you the truth about something and exactly what he feels like and not butter it, there is a Dojo member named Mittens who is not afraid to tell you what he thinks, and he doesn't care about your feelings, and he just outright said the game was shit. Shenmue 0. And I think he even said it to the person who made it.
That's one way to get feedback. Fucking love it. It's so funny.
He will tell you your baby is ugly.
You know, sometimes people need to hear it, man. Truth hurts, but sometimes you need it. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, so like during those years, obviously, I think there were other obviously Shenmue communities as well, but I think the Shenmue Dojo is where we kind of stuck to for the most part. But eventually, I will say I not grew out of it is the right word, but just stopped going as much. And I occasionally still posted here and there, but then eventually, just didn't really go there all that often anymore. But then that brings us to 2015 with the Shenmue 3 announcement.